last week, where Buffett talks about currency and the destruction of currency and the lack of discipline by governments to not inflate and debase currency. And as we all know, Buffett's been on record many times calling Bitcoin rat poison squared. And I think Saylor's been on Twitter for the last 5 years saying, get me a meeting with Buffett. And I'm convinced that I could explain to him the value proposition and get him to allocate. And that's obviously not going to happen now. But to me, it's so fascinating that basically ignorance of technology and the exponential effects of technology up to 2016 still returned this massive, a massive portion of their
let me put the number
in 8 years.
36 billion was his investment in 2016. He's made back on just already between share buybacks, dividends, and unloading. He's already made back over $100 billion. And they're still holding $80 billion. This entire trade that he made might be worth $150 billion in profit. All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. This is a rare one. Only Jack and Trung. Actually, this might be the first one where Bilal Zaidi did not show up where we are both showing up. Think about that.
It's history.
Dude, this is historic. 4 year. Dude, this is going to go off the rails so quickly. This episode has no...
I know.
All right. So for the listeners, this week, I mean, we got lucky because without Bilal doing air traffic control, we actually fell in the lap of like a number of very newsworthy things. Buffett retiring, which is tremendous. You know, a lot of people come here for those big brain thread boy thought stuff. Lots of Buffett stuff. That probably won't be the first one though. We'll do something from last week that I know Jack has really want to talk about. OpenAI creating its AI model to be, I don't even know how you say the word. I know the word fawning. What's the word? Sycophant?
Oh, sycophantic. Yeah.
Sycophantic. It just, you do anything and it's fucking rubbing you off, right? Like it was unbelievable, bro. It's like, you tell, like, I don't know if the listeners, I don't know how deep some of the people saw this. It might have broke through, but you would be like, hey, what color is the sky? And like OpenAI would be like, wow, incredible question. You are like that Socrates level inquiry. So there's that. Apple took a huge L last week. This is actually a really, Jack might be relevant for Jack actually, because Apple in the United States, they apparently lied in court. And the judge in this case, this antitrust case around the App Store, basically said, okay, you lied to us. The hammer's coming down now. You have to allow app developers to be able to guide people to off the app to do subscriptions so that it can go around your 30% tax. This is relevant actually for the Web3 NFT world. I don't know. I know it did a big part of nuking it.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
So we'll see if that has an implication. But before all that, we'll start with very NIA content. Jack has found, as he does often, found a long tweet summarizing Michael Saylor's grand strategy. And there's some choice quotes from this. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what these choice quotes are?
I don't know if I can get through the whole thing, but let me read you I'm going to read you the capitalized intro to this tweet. The MSTR singularity, why strategy will consume the global financial system and transcend capital itself. This is very interesting. The convergence of the Buffett retirement and the Saylor ascension as the new school of capital management is pretty hilarious themes converging. So the quote I pulled out when I sent you this thing, it's like 2,000 words long, is where is it? MSTR is a sovereign central bank without a nation. Unlike the Fed, MSTR doesn't print money, it prints volatility. And that volatility becomes BTC per share torque, which becomes collateral, which becomes value gravity. Every institution will be forced to benchmark against the MSTR standard. Banks will realize their treasuries are melting. Hedge funds will realize their alpha is gone. asset managers will realize MSTR is the most liquid proxy for Bitcoin with embedded recursive leverage. They will not have a choice and they will allocate.
There's no
way. We'll leave
way.
it there. We'll put the link. We'll put the link to the rest.
There's no way this is going to end well. I'm saying this right now. There is a 0% chance this will end well. But
right.
Okay, you know what?
It feels like it's in like escape velocity. I don't know, the law that is being developed, the rate at which these like poems are being written now, it's gone from, you know, sort of logical analysis of financial markets to like total, you know, mythology in a short period of time.
Well, you know what?
We'll see.
I think the way you framed it, we have to talk about this. We got to talk about Big Daddy Buffett then. We were going to push him to the second topic, but now that you said the transition.
Let's link the two together.
Let's really, this is where NIA listeners come for. Absolutely brain dead takes on the future of finance. So let's start actually with an incredible tweet. This one's a little bit older. This was right after Liberation Day. So hilarious, the Liberation Day when Trump unleashed the tariffs. Markets are flat in the month since. I want you to think about that. The S&P 500 was flat in the month after Liberation Day. Counter is that there's going to be some pain when people realize that the ports are empty. So let's not jump to conclusions yet. But let's start with the meme of the week. This comes from an account that Jack put me onto. Good Alexander. I know you're a fan, Jack. This was This was an incredible use of AI. So, Jack, why don't you tell the listeners what we see here? This meme of the week.
So there's a Buffett. What is this taken from? What film is this from?
This is the Anakin Skywalker meme where he's like, you're gonna do good for the world, right? And then she looks at him, and he's not quite sure if Padme is not quite sure if Anakin's gonna do good for the world. So what is Buffett saying here?
The Buffett has been face swapped out for, I assume, Anakin. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It says, buy when there's blood in the streets. And she's looking back at him and saying, so you're buying right now, right? And he's just staring at her blankly, as if to imply the blood is not in the streets yet.
Or that he's not buying.
Yeah.
Well, this actually goes back to a larger thing. So I actually let's deconstruct the mythology of Buffett here, because I think you'll appreciate this, Jack. Okay? The thing about Buffett is undisputedly the greatest investor ever. It's like so for the listeners who don't know, on Saturday at the Berkshire Hathaway annual general meeting, the Woodstock of capitalism in Omaha, Nebraska, tens of thousands of shareholders show up. Let me add an addendum. I'm very sad I didn't go to this one. I've been meaning, I wanted to go. In the last decade, I've talked to myself. Did you ever have any interest in going to a shareholder meeting?
Yeah, I always wanted to go. Yeah.
Did you ever get close? I
always wanted to, but no,
never got.
Never planned it.
And so, unfortunately,
what's the requirement? You
own one share.
Show up, or you have to.
Berkshire. You own one share. You're a shareholder. That's it.
Of which category of stock?
Well, the one that you could probably afford, which is I believe the B class. Say, not the 800.
Not an 800 grand position. Yeah,
you can literally have a single share of whatever. I don't know the number right now, but it's under like 500.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, why don't you look it up? What is
$515 bucks.
Yeah, $515. Right?
Cheaper than a Disney pass, mate.
Exactly. You buy one. Not only that, you're at least going to compound
value
at the
accrual.
U.S. economy. Yeah. You know what? At this point, the Berkshire. So this is the thing about Berkshire, right? And we're gonna get into it. It looks like this episode will be a big Berkshire episode. It turns out, but it's basically an index on the U.S. economy at this point. That's the reality. Like if you're buying Berkshire Hathaway, you're not getting what Buffett did between 1965 and when he officially took over Berkshire. It took him basically 2-3 years to fully take over this textile manufacturing company in Massachusetts. As most people know about the lore, Berkshire Hathaway used to be a failing textile manufacturing company. And then Buffett just shoved his investment firm into it. But 60 years, this is the number, Jack. Here it is. 5.5 million% return compounded over that period. It's basically 20% a year for 60 years, right?
Decent.
The S&P 500 over that span, I believe, was 39,000. So 5.5 million percent gain versus 39,000. Hey, America S&P impressive, or S&P 500.
And how many years?
60 years. So that was the precursor to the S&P. So like S&P 500 as we know today obviously changes, the constituent parts change. So here's the lore that I wanted to bring up, which dovetails with what Jack said about Saylor. And it is a very interesting time, right? Because when Buffett was coming up, as many people know, he's a value investor. He's identifying companies initially under the Benjamin Graham School of Intelligent Investing. You know, a company that's trading less than its fair value, right? Well, he called it the margin of safety. He calculated it out. He made his discounted cash flow analysis and says, actually, I believe this company has a moat to protect its cash flow for this amount. The market is undervaluing it. And historically, he spent maybe the first decade of his career, first 2 decades, literally he would buy any company that was undervalued, whether or not the business itself was quality. If he just saw that it was undervalued, he would buy it. What Charlie Munger did that completely changed Buffett and Berkshire's path was Charlie Munger was saying, actually, you should focus on quality companies. And you should be willing to buy those companies, even if you're not getting as much quote unquote value, right? Like even if the discount isn't huge, the whole thing they say, the line was like, you find Cigar Butt, which is a shitty company, but there's still a few more puffs left in it. You try to buy that.
Yeah.
But then Charlie Munger is just like, no. You want to buy good companies, right? I think the line was,
it was a good, yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, you do it because we got to be thinking.
I was going to get it the wrong way around. It's better to buy a good company at a fair price than a fair company at a good price.
Got it. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. So that changed Buffett's thing. And then obviously, this got him to buy and hold on to the likes of Coca-Cola, Amex, all the insurance companies. I mean, those weren't stock holdings. They started as well, but they brought them in-house. Geico, right? And then more recently, like Bank of America became a huge position because he bent them over during the 2008 crisis. This was like when Buffett, the Oracle, was at his peak. But the other thing that we'll talk about later is like his greatest absolute dollar investment, which is so bonkers, was Apple in 2016, which was 41 years after Apple was founded and 51 years after Berkshire was fully taken over. The number one bet.
Well, this is the Saylor weave perfectly now. Go on.
Hit it. Actually, I was going to do the visualized value weave. This to me is the number one lesson about Buffett. I'm not going to think this and say, all these lines. You can quote them ad nauseum. Just the patience, just the absolute patience this man had. And then, but he had a great quote. Let me read it for you, Jack. You'll appreciate this. He said this this is my favorite quote. I had two favorite, actually. I'll just say this one first. I'll talk about that one later. My favorite quote over this weekend was from Buffett. He said, patient is not a constant asset or liability. You don't want to be patient when the time comes to act, right? Patient mixed with when it is time, you back up the fucking Brinks truck and you go all in. It's a George Soros type thing, actually. Soros famously, when he broke the Bank of England and Stanley Druckenmiller, this is a lesson that Druckenmiller took from it. He says the main lesson for Soros is how much do you make when you're right and how much do you lose when you're wrong? So if you have an opportunity, they don't come around a lot, you just back up the goddamn Brinks truck. That's the thing about Apple, and that's why I brought it to you, Jack. Your famous visualized value graph, if Rafa can throw it up, so Jack's graph that I'm sure a lot of you know is it's a graph that goes up and it says this is pointless at one point, but everything that happens good goes after this is pointless, right? And that's identical to the size of Buffett's net worth. 99% of his net worth came after the age of 50. But anyways, let me drop all that onto you. You cook with the Saylor connection.
So I was going to bring up that video. I think we did a little bit on it maybe a year ago where he's talking about Apple in 2012, Saylor.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea that there are two of them with these different models for assessing the value of something, you could say that he's 4 years earlier than him, or maybe even further, right? Because he's operating a technology business far before then. And I think it was the iPhone was like the light bulb network moment in Saylor's talk. And then I guess the weave can come in a bunch of different ways, but there's a section from the shareholders meeting from last week where Buffett talks about currency and the destruction of currency and the lack of discipline by governments to not inflate and debase currency. And as we all know, Buffett's been on record many times calling Bitcoin rat poison squared. And I think Saylor's been on Twitter for the last 5 years saying, get me a meeting with Buffett. And I'm convinced that I could explain to him the value proposition and get him to allocate. And that's obviously not going to happen now. But to me, it's so fascinating that basically ignorance of technology and the exponential effects of technology up to 2016 still returned this massive, a massive portion of their
let me put the number
in 8 years.
36 billion was his investment in 2016. He's made back on just already between share buybacks, dividends, and unloading. He's already made back over $100 billion. And they're still holding 80 billion. This entire trade that he made might be worth $150 billion in profit. Think about that. The $150 billion in profit. This is probably, in an absolute terms, the greatest trade ever, right? The only one off the top of mind that's close is Alibaba, 20 million from Jack Ma into Alibaba. And I think he ended up walking with 88 billion. So just context here.
Yeah, and I think there's basically two ways to view it, right? It's like you could wait until that thing becomes like operating at that scale. The 3x is massive. What was 3x, 4x? You'd consider that versus like the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, which is maybe venture capital or angel investing or whatever, like the spray and pray, make 1,000 bets, and one of them returns the whole like the Teal. I think that's a Teal quote, right?
Facebook,
it's like you make 1,000 and one returns the fund 5 times over.
So he made so Facebook, for example, is 500,000 was his check, and he made a bill. So as an example,
yeah, insane.
Yeah,
and I think that the popular criticism or the ability to forecast the second order effects of technology are hard for someone who's 90 years old, 95 years old. And is that indicative of like Apple basically becoming undeniable on paper before he allocates, right? Like the risk gap or the forecasting or the basically the method of investing is different based on what is true on the balance sheet versus like what you see early on as an adoption cycle and are able to forecast out, understanding network effects. And this is all beautifully tied together because the next topic that we wanted to talk about is like the hardware and company as a platform, which is what Apple became, right? Very quickly after they released this hardware device, it's like, let's build like a circular economy on top of these devices that we're shipping and have millions of developers working for us.
Call it out the App Store.
And take a 30% cut. Yeah, exactly.
The App Store. Yeah.
Like the flywheel of the App Store is insane. Zero marginal cost. And that's what Saylor's talking about in his talk in 2012, which is like, these guys can make an update, press one button in San Francisco and modify every single device on the planet that's connected to that network. And up until that point in time, maybe you could make that comparison to like operating systems on computers, but it's not really the same mechanism because you have, the purchasing of software. You would get in the car, drive to PC World or whatever, wherever you go to get buy software from, buy the CD, go put it in and this is like a step function in just exponential markets, software from anywhere to anywhere, money moving around electronically. And Buffett have any PayPal ownership? No, right?
No, he never had PayPal. And but I
No.
wanted to say something because you brought up something, a great point. And I think I might have buried the leader, but he's retiring. Did we not say that yet? He's retiring at the end of
Oh
the
yeah,
year.
I think people will probably know that. Yeah, yeah.
Greg Abel will be the new CEO. The funny thing he did was he actually sprung it on the entire conference. The only people that knew were his son Howard is on the board of Berkshire, and his daughter knew, but no one else knew. The other 10 directors
Wow.
didn't know. Amazing, right? He obviously got the standing O. But Jack, something you mentioned, I'm so glad you brought the Saylor conversation. When Saylor had identified that Apple was actually like a luxury product, that it can maintain pricing power, and that effectively was a monopoly in 2012. In that clip, he actually says, I was having dinner with one of the 5 richest people in the world, and that guy was asking me questions, and he didn't understand the iPhone. He's like, won't somebody have a cheaper version? Why did it would? I think it was Buffett. I think in the comments,
Yeah.
people were like, the guy he was with was probably Buffett, and he was probably at one of these paid dinners or lunches, like charity things. And again, to your point though, he didn't have enough time with Buffett, because if Buffett sat down with 5 hours, he would no longer think that Bitcoin was rat poison squared, right?
Well, and I don't think Saylor, I think Saylor was in public denouncing
Oh yeah, at
Bitcoin
that
back
time,
then.
that's right.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring something up, Jack, that you brought up and you touched on it. And you said, why was it that it took 2016 for Buffett to understand Apple? Well, to be fair to Buffett, the iPhone was only 9 years in at that point, only in air quotes. But the first, call it 30 plus years of Apple there was not a surefire bet, right? So, but you actually nailed it, because Buffett loves monopolies, right? He loves them. Amex is a type of monopoly, right?
License to print.
Yeah, license to print. Coca-Cola, IP, the brand is like a monopoly in a lot of its distribution is a for
insane.
Or the monopoly is a far way to say it. The moat is so extensive on Coca-Cola, right? It's like specifically the moat that he identified with Coca-Cola was 2 things. It was the brand, obviously, which he thought was one of the greatest brands ever, but it was the distribution. As in, dude, if you want to get vaccines or some type of medicine in the entire world, you know who you would go through? You just shove it through Coca-Cola's distribution, because these guys can hit every single nook and cranny anywhere in the world, right? So he knew that Amex had a similarly strong type of moat for its business. I mean, all credit cards do, right? These are effective monopolies around credit. And if you just go through the list, but you nailed exactly what it was that Buffett had realized about Apple. He realized exactly what you said, is like they created a monopoly, and the monopoly is the iPhone. Literally the iPhone is like, some people will only ever buy an iPhone. So ipso facto, Apple has a monopoly on that product, right? And then they stack on this app store thing. And it's actually interesting that when Buffett and Berkshire unloaded their stake, they sold $80 billion of Apple last year, which is also a running joke on Twitter, because Berkshire has a record $350 billion in U.S. treasuries. They own more treasuries than the Fed. They own 5% of all treasuries, making whatever, 3.5%, 4%. As the markets are imploding, there's all this uncertainty. We're headed to recession, right? And people are like, wow, he timed the Apple exit to a T. And because he probably saw that what he thought was the moat and the monopoly was cracking, right? And as like Jack said, we'll discuss it. The App Store has been deemed to be an illegal anti-competitive monopoly, right? The way that they've been treating it. China-US trade war. Although Buffett is extremely complimentary of Tim Cook. He said only Steve Jobs could have created the iPhone, but he's like, only Tim Cook could have done what happened with Apple in the past decade, right? Extremely complimentary, even though they unloaded $80 billion. But it's just, I think broadly, they think the stock market's overvalued. And I wanted to pass something off to you before kind of wrapped up the Berkshire thing, but I think Berkshire's position now is quite interesting. But did you read or see anything from this past weekend that you're like, oh, that's quite notable, or any larger thoughts about Buffett?
Just the currency thing popped up on my feed. I'm obviously going to get that algorithmically, just, it's right up my street. But it's like a 2.5 minute clip where he's like, we would consider owning other currencies based on what's happening to the US dollar. And then obviously the speculation is like, whoa, what other currency could you possibly store value in that a government can print it. Because his comments are basically like every government historically will resort to that. Like I think he even used a historic example of like clipping coins in ancient Rome. It's like at a certain point, it's not even the fault of the individual politicians per se. It's like a behavior that emerges as a natural property of like the position they're in, where it's like,
right, debasement will happen no matter what, right? It's like governments will always overstretch themselves because the ability to print money is just it's like the ring in Lord of the Ring, right? You can't not imagine you had this power. Right, you have this power,
and you can like just paper over your mistakes, right? And people don't realize until
you push it down the road, right? You kick it down the can down the road, and the next government gets blamed, or the next. It could last for 20. That's basically what happened to the U.S. dollar, right? It's like the U.S. dollar, as we've discussed in previous episodes, it's going to be the global reserve currency for decades to come. There's nothing that can compete with the depth of the market, and still the all the different capital assets you could purchase with it, how it's already underpinning so much of trade. However, to what Jack's alluding to and what Buffett's alluding to is people are looking at it, is the Fed as independent as we think it is? Are these deficits and the debt load sustainable, right? Are the institutions and the rule of law of the United States of America, is that going to still be in place to secure if you wanted that currency? And people are seeing that might not necessarily be the case, as we've discussed in previous episodes, to the same degree it was 5 years ago, right? So you found something.
It hasn't been the case, right? It's interestingly like it has not been the case for a very long time. Like just inflation as a concept and the money supply increasing. Have we ever talked about Chris Johnson?
No, hit us.
Twitter account. I think we did at one point, but he's like. Been a favorite follower of mine for a few years, but he tweeted this yesterday. If you reach in everyone's bank account and take 20% of their money, we'll overthrow the government by the morning. If you let them keep the money but increase all the goods and services price by 20%, we'll be quiet and watch the NBA playoffs. Perfect.
Unbelievable, man.
But it is like this silent thing where people like all of a sudden look around like, how much is, why do houses 40% more expensive than they were 4 years ago, but I'm getting paid the same amount? Or I've had like a 1% increase in what I earn, but asset prices have gone up 40%, or because the money supply has gone up 40%. It's like it's extremely ridiculously simple.
Sailor
Raoul Pal banana zone thesis, right? The money supply is like all of that money is accruing to people who hold assets. Everybody, like if you don't hold assets, then your savings don't keep in pace with the rate of inflation, and you get manipulated, or you get like debased. Your savings are just evaporating. The same way if you put like cash under your mattress 10 years ago,
the rats
versus just like sticking it in exactly. Same, it's the perfect analogy. They would.
The rats will eat it is the same as gold clipping. Well, Jack,
exactly.
Actually, the point you brought up is actually quite interesting because I read a interesting article. Who wrote this article? But let me pull it up and I'll tell you what he wrote. Okay, so Quoth the Raven. It's a great Substack. His title of his Substack was "The Sweet Sorrow of Warren Buffett's Parting." And he was just making the point that his whole shtick, he's an Austrian kind of school of economists. He thinks that debasing currencies, probably similar to kind of
he's a Bitcoin guy.
Yeah, no, he's gold. He's more gold. He's more on the gold side. But the point that's being made was Buffett leaving, whether intentional or not, is kind of like a pretty large signal, right? They're sitting on $350 billion of cash. And like you said, Jack, he publicly said that he would explore, or Berkshire would explore, other currencies, right? But also the fact that Buffett, who's basically the beacon of American capitalism, is sitting on his hands with $350 billion, that's as large as a message as you need. And the point that Quoth the Raven is making, he thinks this, the message that he read into it was this: the value world that I described earlier with you about how Buffett has started, for discounted cash flow, reading 10Ks and understanding a company better than anybody else, something anyone could do, by the way, back then to identify quality companies, that's completely out the window now. Now it's all narrative. It's something you talked about just a bit earlier about how Michael Saylor narrative, there's a favorite NIA, right? Is like
mythology.
Yeah, the psychology, the memes are pushing asset prices, right? It's like Tesla is literally $1 trillion company because of what we expect in 10, 20 years in the future, right? And but so much of the market is like this right now. Like Palantir, similarly, it is being valued at 600 times earnings on a PE basis because it's seen at the vanguard of the AI transition. And I mean, you can go ad nauseum about this, about how memes, and we're not even talking about crypto. Like crypto is all literally 90% of it is the meme, right? And the point that Paul the Raven's making is this transition is he doesn't think there's even a world where, well, I actually agree with him in the sense of like, first of all, Berkshire can never be more than what it is now. It's never going to gain 5.5 million% again over 60 years, right? Like this is the,
unless,
you know what I mean? Unless Greg Abel discovers Bitcoin,
gets lunch. Unless he gets lunch with a certain Michael Saylor, yeah.
Well, Jack, actually, so we have talked. It's like so Berkshire, literally just an index fund on the U.S. economy at this point, right? It's like its largest acquisition in the past 15 years, other than Apple, like Berkshire, Burlington North Santa Fe, right? Bought the entire, like one of the largest railroad systems in America, right? Like as physical as it can get. And they own all these utilities. They deploy the most solar in all of America. Berkshire Hathaway Energy. They're massively invested in Occidental Petroleum. I think like a $50-60 billion oil company. Like they're very like connected to the literal economy, right? But other than Jack's hypothetical, where Greg Abel has a 30-minute, a 3-hour lunch with Michael Saylor.
There's no other way.
Like, how else is there's really not much else for them to deploy. No, you're right though. How else can they deploy $350 billion, right? This was the point about Buffett. He's talked about this. He's like, there's not much more we can do. Is like
he completed the game. He won the game.
He won the game, and that's why, like, if you actually look over the past decade, basically desperate to find an investment, which is why you'd mentioned it. Apple, when they started investing, it was a $500 billion company, and it ended up being a $3 to $4 trillion company. Who else could have soaked up all that cash, right? It's literally just the big tech companies, but none of them had the same monopoly that Buffett could understand as an iPhone. Because the iPhone it's a consumer product. That's the thing. At the end of the, like Buffett didn't have to understand.
Can of Coke.
Yeah, it's a can of Coke. Exactly. It's a consumer product, which is what Buffett said. He's like, when he had that unlock, he's like, oh, it's the greatest consumer product ever. He's like, done, right? He doesn't need to understand cloud and network and everything else we kind of described. It's like greatest consumer product ever. Fully understood that. But let me wrap up the thought about Berkshire. So the last decade, they've taken huge swings. And outside of Apple, it hasn't been great. They bought Precision Cash Parts, like a manufacturer for plane parts and industrial parts for $2 billion. They did a $10 billion write down on that. They helped do a takeover of Kraft Heinz and then the people that do Tim Hortons Burger King. And that hasn't gone super well, right? The other one that did actually, which is very large for anybody else, they turned a $13 billion investment in Japanese trading companies into $24 billion. But even Buffett was on stage is like, doesn't really move the needle for us. He's like, we wish that was a $100 billion investment, right? Again, they're sitting on $350 billion cash, worth $1 trillion. Not much more they can do. But yeah, so let me throw that at you. Other than this hypothetical lunch, how do you see Berkshire? What do they represent now moving forward?
I don't know. It's like it is an interesting juncture. Maybe a new Adam Newman venture, mate.
Might soak up 350 billion.
Community adjusted.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I think like the implication was gold. No, like if he hates Bitcoin, he doesn't want to hold USD. I'm assuming that that's like partly what they're implying, but I agree with everything you said about like the overvaluation of everything, like what the price to earnings has gone from the tech narrative has inflated that metric enormously, right? Like the idea that you can grow a monopoly in a much shorter time. Like the Coca-Cola monopoly probably took, it's like incredibly difficult to disrupt Coca-Cola. And maybe you can make that same argument for like Facebook's really hard to disrupt, but in terms of like pure amount of time and infrastructure required for like energy businesses and like physical product businesses that have the reach of something like a Coca-Cola, they haven't gone that hard on software, right? Because it feels like the life cycles are way more compressed and the disruption is way more violent in software than even standing up an iPhone competitor would be like just we've talked about this before. It's like this an unbelievably long process. Not even just building the thing, but changing behavior to like compete away users from this ecosystem that they have 10 years of their, or 20 years of their life in at this point, or 15 years, sorry. So it feels like over 60 years are like catching these big trends, and maybe like AI is the top tier, the S tier narrative now, right? Or like compute. Do they have an NVIDIA position? No,
they don't have an NVIDIA position. You kind of,
because that would be seen as a huge loss, no? Like a huge miss. Like I think NVIDIA outperformed Bitcoin over the last 15 years.
No, that was a huge miss. Well, I'll tell you, their technology history, their big technology bet was IBM in the early 2010s.
Yeah, brutal. And this
brutal,
like
right?
some of this stuff is a fascinating like counter argument to like best capital allocation story ever, right? It is you can afford to make massive missteps if you have a couple big winners at that size.
Well, I was about to say exactly to your point. Like we could dog him for like missing like these obvious ones. Well, dude, he was best friends with Bill Gates in the 90s, and he didn't invest in Microsoft.
Yeah, true.
Right? And he's gone on record saying that he kicks himself for missing Jeff Bezos, who he called the greatest entrepreneur of his age. But I'll tell you one that the one that they obviously missed. And this isn't like some hindsight's 2020 stuff. They've come out and said it. They said they missed Google, and this is what he said, and you'll appreciate this. He said we actually had a massive insight into Google that should have told us this was a beast. Geico was buying so much insurance ads on Google, and they're like, "Oh my God, the amount we're paying to win
expense,
this, this auction, and that it's worth it." He's like, "We had that insight, and we still didn't buy it." So like, but to your point,
where's Bilal when we need him?
Yeah. Well, dude, once an episode, there it is. Bilal's former employer. Yeah. But Jack, to your point, people dog him, but that's, as you said, the exact thing. You only need one home run. That's my big takeaway from Buffett's life. There's two takeaways. Is you got to stay in the game. It's the whole surviving is the main thing. Just survive, be around so you can actually hit that home run. But even for him, that's like that lesson's not unique to him because he's so many home runs, right? But that to me is just when I look at his story and I'm like, okay, what's actually replicable here is like what actually is like something that I would enjoy doing in my life. It is really just that. It's like, don't get stressed out when you miss. Because I missed so many, right? Yeah, I missed so many. But like, am I still in the game? If I'm still in the game, there's a chance you can get whatever that is. In my case, it'd be the Apple, even though for him that was like his 30th big win, right? But like, I just need one, man. I just need one W. That's it. And
the NVIDIA chart is so insane. I've never really looked at it.
It's unbelievable, right?
It's so unbelievable. I think what is interesting is like that so much of this stuff is like path dependent, and value investing as a practice is like trying to minimize that, right? It's like not a what if, like, oh, if somebody invents Ethereum, then NVIDIA is going to get valuable. Like that's a complete like left curve. No investment thesis, right? Like, oh, these are like the use case for this to be valuable and for the like demand for the hardware to go up. The application doesn't exist yet. Obviously, when OpenAI brings a product to market and a million people sign up for it in an hour, it's like, then Nvidia's an quote unquote obvious trade at that point.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's also just a hard position to be in for whoever's taken over managing that, right? It's like
Greg Abel.
If you maybe make a Steve Jobs, Tim Cook analogy, do another weave there, like you have like the DNA of this company or this this investment thesis that you're trying to basically evolve in a more sensible, not even a more sensible way, just like a more maybe just like you don't want to change too much about the way it operates versus people who take the helm of something that may be seen to be like not been managed well and try and change direction. This is like capital preservation. How did it do after he announced he's stepping down, by the way?
I saw Ryan Peterson, Flexport CEO, he showed a chart. It sold off by 6% on Monday. You want to laugh?
That's a lot.
Ryan
of money.
makes a great point though. He's like, how is this not priced in? Buffett's 94
right.
years.
Yeah. It's a great point.
No, but Jack, what was the term you said about Scott Bessent? The term when your last name or the name signifies.
I can't remember.
Yeah, the Jack's point was that when your name basically kind of
your
pushes
name becomes
you career,
law.
So like Bessent means like gold something. Like he's going to be a financial individual. And but anyway, the point I brought that up was like in a different way. I wonder. So Berkshire's next CEO is Greg Abel, who is now the head of Berkshire Energy, and does basically the entire portfolio out of Geico and the insurance arm. So the way they kind of split the succession is Greg Abel will be CEO, Ajit Jain, who's a legend, still will run their insurance, and then Todd Combs and Ted Wexler will run their investment portfolio, the stock portfolio. So Todd and Ted were actually the ones that came to Buffett with Apple, but we don't have to go through that history. It's not super germane here. But what I want to say was, Jack, I'm curious. His name's Greg Abel. How much of his life has been because his last name's Abel? I'm actually serious here.
A-B-L-E or A-B-E-L?
A-B-E-L, but still, you're calling him Greg Abel.
Well, no, I'm saying both of them are like Abel is a
religious,
a biblical character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Book of Genesis, baby.
Dude, what do you think?
A shepherd.
Oh yeah.
That's your answer.
Wait. Yeah. Shepherding the money? Oh my goodness, bro. Dude, okay, there you go. He will. If Greg Abel can double Berkshire Hathaway in the next, call it decade, he will have done well. Guess it's $2 trillion in a decade. He's long term. He's long term. Dude, that's it. You know what?
I think these like energy businesses, insurance businesses, it's like as long as the human race persists, governments print money, those businesses are gonna produce cash.
Well, to your point, Jack, they haven't unlocked. They haven't dabbled in the crypto economy.
Can you imagine? Yeah, just went full on.
All right, that's great on the Berkshire conversation.
That was good coverage.
That was great coverage. Man, that's what you get with NIA. You start with the Michael Saylor, strategy economic takeover. What did they do? What would you say? Volatility is what they sell. And
what was that? What was the thing that I sent you the other week about like tourists? Like volatility scares off tourists.
Volatility scares off tourists. Oh, did
I send you that video?
Saylor said that, yeah? Yeah, beautiful.
I sent you the video and you said I'm buying more. There it is. Volatility is a gift to the faithful. It scares away the tourist.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, man. There's like the Saylor law is pretty magnificent at the moment. As somebody who spent a lot of time reading and listening to most of the stuff that he's produced, it's getting to a point now where I'm like, I cannot wrap my mind around the intricacies of this of these mechanisms that are being spawned. There's like, I don't know, there's like 2 or 3 new tickers now that have different degrees of exposure. MSTY, MST.
Oh, like the derivatives, like 2x, 3x ones.
Incredible. And like I've seen like what seems to be the salient takeaway from it, or the TLDR, is like there is still a big arbitrage in like these pools of capital that can't buy Bitcoin directly. So they're getting exposure via MicroStrategy, and he's taking on debt at ridiculously favorable terms that essentially, you know, have no obligation to pay back it. And again, I'm saying that without any like understanding of the mechanics of that, but that's what I read every time I try and look into it. Is like
they come due in 6-7 years is what you're trying to say. There's no and
the price of and the price of Bitcoin would have to like literally
hit 10,000
implode, go to 0.
Years.
For him to be called on that. So it's like
not investment advice. Investment advice.
No, absolutely not. The clue is in the name. But what's fascinating is the like the ability for this to like drum up story. Yeah, and it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar to what we talked about when the X acquisition happened in the beginning, where it's like it's just you can disconnect it from fundamentals in a way that is so grand and far-reaching that at a certain point that like volatility, uncertainty, all of this stuff becomes a massive feature instead of a bug, right? Like, we're building a company to colonize space. Like, what's the TAM for that? Who knows? Just infinity.
Story. That's the thing.
Everything app.
Yeah, you can't run a DCF on that. But let's use this opportunity to transition to what you had kind of teased up earlier, the App Store. So this is an interesting story because we've kind of touched on it. The App Store became a very important way for the iPhone monopoly to be maximized for Apple, right? I believe their services revenue, which is the subscription, but the large part of it is the App Store fees. It's like $100 billion a year business. And the iPhone does about a 200
That's
bill.
Massive and incredible.
And then the other 100's the other hardware. So just insane when you think about it, right? But so just to tee this up, because this was a big deal. This is a massive shot across Apple's bow, right? Because we've known about, and we've talked about Apple's 30% tax for years now. Jack has discussed it in the context of NFTs. You know, during our heyday, that was a big topic, and how it didn't allow the NFT business model to exist, right? Like you couldn't even, like if you're paying a 30% tax, but that's what he basically said, right? He's like, can't even happen. Yeah,
because it's a peer-to-peer exchange of value, right? It's like Zillow taking 30%. Like you could charge whatever fees you want on like duplicating some lines of code, but if there's an actual object that people own passing back and forth, you can't have a marketplace with a 30% fee.
Because it might trade like 3 times. Well, we know, right? Trade multiple times in a week, right? But like the reason I bring up Jack's thing is because I'll frame it like this: the TLDR. This is the TLDR on the lawsuit, the anti-competitive lawsuit that the government brought. The term here is anti-steering, and this has been quite controversial. So effectively, Apple. Now, some of you might know. Here's the best example. Have you ever tried to buy a book on your Kindle app in an Apple iPhone? If you're a listener and you've tried that, you probably haven't been able to, right? Do it directly. And it's because Kindle doesn't want to have to pay, Amazon doesn't want to pay the 30% fee. So they're basically forcing you to buy on their own website. Now, Apple had to creak open their app store a bit in the apps itself and allow some apps, for example, Spotify, to push users to have a link out to the website, for example, or Netflix, another example where you just subscribe directly onto their website, right? And the challenge has always been for these apps is, do you just live with the low friction world that Apple is providing you, a one-click, subscription, or do you add the friction, the extra step? And as Jack knows in design, one extra step will lead to X% drop off, right? In conversion. It's massive. So
Exponential, yeah.
exponential, right? Is like, is that friction worth, is that loss in conversion worth the 30% tax? This has always kind of been the debate. And the question people had though is it's only really a debate because Apple's forcing it, right? Like they're basically saying, yeah, you can go out, but we're gonna make it a pain in the dick to do it. And we're gonna force
And the only people that can really, the only people that can really attempt it are people like Amazon that have like giga distribution and can sort of, have the distribution and the energy and resources to just like make people go around it.
Right.
Like if you can build the biggest book network on earth, you can say, yeah, you have to go here to get it. They don't really have any competitors.
Exactly.
You're developing like a little mini game with 10 users. Please pay your 30%.
Yeah, pay your 30%. Well, I mean, you kind of nailed the main point here is people intuitively get that it's unfair, but there's not, you really can't do anything about it unless the courts step in, right? And this is where, so Epic Games, which owns Fortnite, right? Tim Sweeney was the one that kind of brought this case in 2020. Fortnite was trying to sell goods and subscriptions inside Fortnite, and they've been kicked out of the App Store for years now because they just pushed it as far as it could. They're like, we're just going to try to go around you entirely. And Epic and Tim Sweeney have become kind of the center of this case. And basically what was found over the last 4 years, internal communications within Apple, was that Tim Cook and his team, they knew that they're squeezing people, right? And they knew that in a lot of ways they're being kind of they're not just necessarily anti-competitive. They were actually giving a worse experience for consumers and developers, right? And Apple's position though, so I'll ask this to you, Jack. Apple's whole position is we built this empire, right? Like this is our brand, our IP, our ability to marry hardware and software. We are just getting our just dessert for building this platform. Because I know in the past we've talked, you're very, people deserve to get the desserts that they've earned, right? So my question to you specifically is, how much of this is Apple rightfully charging for something that they've developed versus there should be an idea of fairness here? And like, where does that tip over?
I guess that just 30% feels egregious, right? I think that's I think that's also framed. I don't think that's actually the terms until you get to a certain amount of volume. That's obviously the one that hits the headlines.
I think it's $1 million. You have to get to $1 million to 30. Anything under is 15%. They're forced to change it.
Yeah.
So they have been a little bit flexible. The other thing is subscription wise, it's 30% first year. So if it's a subscription service, then 15% on the follow-up years. Because they know, like you said, though, this is 100% margin. It's 100% margin.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's some good analogies in different industries. Like in art, you pay a gallery 50% in some cases.
Wow.
Most cases, like any established gallery, they want 50% off you. And this idea of like peer-to-peer markets in art, there's only been like the surface has been scratched on. There's been like 10% stuck around, then it just goes down and down and down, and weirdly, like this behavior just emerges in every market eventually, where there's like 0% of zero is nothing, right? If you don't have Apple's distribution, then you're going to go like door to door and sell your app and install it on people's phones? Like, no, you're not going to do that. Should you be able to do that for free? I don't know. Is like the like ad-based apps. I always thought that was the most horrendous experience ever. But I think they should have done, or would have been interesting, is like, imagine if they developed like a way more elegant ad system within Apple that you could opt into as a developer to fund, a value exchange between you and Apple versus the 30% cut straight off. Because like, weirdly, this also sort of ties back to the value investing, the Buffett story, where it's just like software is so like how do you determine a price for software? Like an ebook costs what 80% of what a paper book costs. It has none of the manufacturing costs. What's zero?
$9.99.
Right.
Well, actually, Jack, I'll tell you about the App Store, which you'll laugh. You know the history of the App Store and how it got to 30%?
The cartridges, right? The game thing.
So in the 1980s, Nintendo, they had built their platform. Same deal, right? And they're like, if you want to be on our platform as a game developer, 10%. And then if you can't even manufacture your own cartridges, we'll charge you another 20%. There you got the 30. So, but to your point, digital hardware, right? And on top of that, developers have to pay already a fee to Apple. I think it's $99. So they're already monetizing the App Store. And listen, I'm not saying they don't deserve.
I think it's anything. An Icarus. It's a bit of an Icarus thing, right? It's like you just milked it too hard.
They milked it way too hard.
The universe will eventually come back and be like, hey, your $100 billion a year business, like we're going to take that to zero now, right? Instead of saying, oh, you could have just made your $10 billion a year and been very, very happy with it and built a much more, a thriving. I guess that's the thing. Like it is indicative of the quality of their product that people are willing to pay that, right?
Yep.
I think that is another like market argument where it's like, yeah, I'll build software and make $7 for every $10 that people spend on my game or whatever it is that they're building. And when you're Fortnite and you're doing like the volume that game must be doing is just monstrous, right? And you're saying it's not you can't play it on an iPhone now.
Which one? I think Fortnite's off, but it's going to come back on. They're apparently going to negotiate but to your point, right? You said some people are big enough where they can accept a world where, like you said, Amazon with the ebooks. Fortnite's obviously an absolute monster of a game.
This is all like comes down to like Fortnite can afford to not have it on iPhone, right? Because they have such amazing IP and product that people will like
come find them.
Yeah, they'll go and find a different device or they'll like jump through hoops. But most people don't have that option. What's funny is it's almost the wrong way around. Like the people that get the most value from it are people that are getting distribution that they otherwise couldn't have.
Yeah.
But I mean, in gaming, I guess that's an interesting thing because you can develop IP that lives across all these different devices.
Multi-platform.
But iPhone apps, you are really building something that is like specific to that device, right? Like specific to the phone.
Somebody making six figures that owns an iPhone, right? The type of person that would own an iPhone, exactly. Like you're building for the type of person.
And I'm making the argument that like most of the applications make no sense on other devices. Like you wouldn't install a to-do app on your PS5.
Or Uber. You wouldn't have Uber on a PS5.
Exactly.
Hey, you might.
Like, but largely speaking, like they invented a category. And should they like have some ability to like capture value from the category they created? Yes. Yeah. To what extent should they be able to do that? That is, when you're getting challenged in court, you've probably gone a little bit too far.
I think you absolutely nailed it. It is fully the Icarus thing. Because these guys could have gone.
Took the piss. You took the piss.
This is actually somebody. The easiest thing was this: they make the majority of their revenue because this is not going to be surprising. Majority of mobile app revenue is gaming. Mm-hmm. So you literally could have just gone hard on games and let everybody else off, right? You could have gone $5 tax on everybody except games, and that's reasonable. To your point, Jack, is like if you're a mobile app gamer, that's the. Like it's the same way that PlayStation can charge it or a Nintendo Switch. Like a Nintendo Switch game is $80, right? So like they're charging you.
What's PlayStation charging?
I think they're moving it up too. I think they both moved up to $60-$80.
No, I'm saying what's the tax on in-game purchases on PlayStation? Do you know?
I don't know what that tax is. That's a great question.
Because that would be interesting to just compare it across the board too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just a case of milking it too hard, man. This comes back around eventually. And you know what else? Like, there are weird exceptions when I think about it now. Like, Venmo, Cash App, Coinbase. Like you're making financial transactions in an app that they don't have a cut of, right?
Yeah.
It's like a semantic thing. It's the
Subscription
like
services.
purchase,
Yeah. Are you
yeah,
purchasing? Yeah.
good like digital goods, like even gambling, right? Like people probably putting filthy amounts of money through gambling apps, but Apple's not taking fees on that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe they are taking a minuscule fee on like just on a
On
per
DoorDash,
transaction basis
on like
is a
DraftKings.
tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they take like, a fix, like a Stripe, processing fee like Apple Pay. So I also think Apple Pay is an incredible product.
Oh my goodness, dude.
That's an unbelievable product. And I like that. I'm assuming, I don't know the full stack, but I'm assuming that's like a Stripe competitor. They own that top to bottom, or do they do it with a
Well, let me actually
partner?
read to you how crazy Apple Pay is. This also came out from a lawsuit, one of these antitrust conversations. So I'll read it out to you. Visa has long viewed Apple Pay as an existential threat to its business. So the company has been paying Apple hundreds of millions of dollars a year so the iPhone maker doesn't deploy a competing functionality. Bro, you nailed it. What do you think about that?
Insane.
Visa, a $500 billion company, has this, like we talk about, incredible moat as a credit business. It thinks Apple is an existential threat to its business.
But I mean, this whole supercomputer in your pocket, like there are these 50,000 person organizations that exist that have 40 years of work put into something that could be disrupted by a like reasonably sized team within a hardware company like Apple, right? Like I don't know how difficult it is to build a competitor when you have a network of that scale. But what I'm curious about is how, like, is Apple making revenue from Apple Pay on a per transaction basis? Do you know?
I believe they are, in addition to this placement fee they're getting from Visa to be the partner, which is insane. If you think
I'm
about
gonna just do a little GPT thing that could get us into that could be our little weave into the
yeah, we'll weave it into the last. Yeah, there we go. OpenAI. Why don't you hit us with that statistic, and then we will go into the weave.
Oh my God, what an incredible question about the intricacies of mobile finance. Yes, Apple earns money from each transaction made through Apple Pay. Specifically, they charge issuing banks a fee of 15 basis points for every credit card transaction. That is not bad. That would be a nice little earner, mate.
Crazy.
Everywhere I go, bing, 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 everybody's using that now.
It's great.
They're coming for it,
dude,
mate.
And on the watch, bro, it's unbelievable.
They're coming for everything.
Let's do the transition because you just got glazed there. For the listeners, we'll do the last topic. For people that don't know, OpenAI, we kind of teased it earlier, they had released a new version of their O3 model. And an issue that came up was the topic of glazing. So, Jack, can you explain to the listener what glazing means? I believe you pulled up the Urban Dictionary for us. Could you tell us off the top of your head what glazing means? Because this is a term that was specifically called out by Sam Altman, CEO Sam Altman.
Glazing is a slang term that means to overcompliment someone or something, usually a celebrity or influencer. It originated from a Discord server and became popular. It became popular on TikTok. The term glazing sparks curiosity as to what it means, often resembled by donuts or cake getting dripped on. Getting called a glazer is not a compliment.
There you go, right? There you go. So, well, Jack, I'll give you one example. So, this actually has been going on for a while. And let me frame this like this, right? Let me actually give some 50,000 foot level on what's happening. ChatGPT is doing about 500 million users a week, which is insane. It is probably the fastest growing software product product, period.
Yeah.
In the history of mankind.
Anecdotally, like whenever I go to a place where people have laptops, every single person is using it.
It won. It's
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some context, which is also relevant, because yesterday it came out that OpenAI is giving up on its plans to become a for-profit company.
For-profit, yeah.
So I'll give here's a top line implication. I think this is like a 10D chess or attempt by Sam Altman. Obviously, he still wants control. The main point about going from non-profit to for-profit that people are critical of is like, why doesn't every person in the world do this, right? It's like you start a non-profit, you get donations that are tax deductible, you get all the goodwill of being a non-profit to attract talent, and all those benefits. And then once your business is good, you flip the switch and now you're a for-profit, right? It just made no sense ever. And obviously Elon,
I still don't understand the distinction though, because people invest in it, presumably, are they donations or they own equity in the company, or is it not possible to own equity in it?
Well, no, the non-profit donation was, there's no expectation of return on that. It's
Got
like
it. But there are people that have committed funds to OpenAI. They have a
for-profit arm, correct. So the non-profit, the original
isn't this all just total horse shit though? Because they can just like attribute earnings to whatever portion of that they like.
Well, this is why this change they made yesterday is very relevant to your point. They're basically dancing around the point, right? The point of the non-profit was that they're going to develop AGI to the benefit of humanity, and whatever that meant.
That old chestnut, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then now what they did yesterday was actually, we'll forget about becoming a for-profit. We're going to keep the non-profit. However, this is what they did. The for-profit used to have a cap. So the non-profit controls the for-profit. I mean, you're at this point, you're pulling out the conspiracy whiteboard, right? So if I've lost people at this point, whatever, just know this. There used to be a profit cap on the for-profit arm, right? So I think it was 100 times. That's been removed. So at the end of the day, you have to think, if you're Sam Altman, what you're trying to do, you want to control the company. He thought the best way to do that was with the for-profit, but now effectively what he's done, he's like, actually, we'll keep the non-profit with its ostensible mission to develop AGI for humanity. However, that non-profit board is basically hand-selected by him. So they're going to be, he's not going to have what happened in November 2023, right? That crazy weekend he was fired. And then they removed the cap because a lot of the 30, 40 bill they raised this year is contingent on them having a for-profit company. However, if you remove the cap, it's effectively the same thing. All that setup I'm making.
Why didn't they just do that in the first place?
I know. Exactly. Exactly, right? So
we all know it was bollocks from the beginning. So why, it's just so
maybe it's still complicated enough where there's clearly they thought that it was worthwhile trying, but everybody's just like, this is idiotic, right?
Right.
So here comes to the glazing thing. Now if you're building a business that, let's be honest, is not about creating AGI for humanity anymore. It's about creating one of the biggest software companies in the history of mankind and becoming the next Google of Facebook Meta, right? Like this is a $1 trillion company in the wings, right? Yeah. That's what Sam Altman wants. What do? You juice engagement, right? You do the entire playbook that social has done, TikTok has done, Google has done, Facebook has done. You juice engagement on your platform. I'll give you a quote right now. Kevin Systrom, the co-founder of Instagram, who had a falling out with Zuckerberg in 2018, left Facebook after they were acquired. 6 years after they're acquired, was at a conference over this past weekend. He said, I can tell you one issue I have with the AI apps right now. It's very clear they're juicing engagement. And I think that's to the detriment of the product, because instead of just giving me an answer that I want, they keep doing things to extend the conversation. Or to Jack's point, they're just oozing on the compliments, right? They're hitting me, so I'm engaged, hyper engaged. And there are a lot of credible stories coming out of users literally falling in love with these chatbots. I mean, listen, if you're predisposed to that, and we already live most of our lives in chat environments, like I mostly communicate with you and Bilal via chat, right? most of my friends and families are in different chat groups. If you're already kind of doing that, yes, a chat bot with a little bit of personality that's glazing you, that's going to psychologically fuck with you and juice engagement. So let me pass it to you, Jack. My question is this. What was your reaction to the glazing experience? Did it make you kind of like, this is... What was your reaction?
I actually got it from... Celia experienced it before me. She was like, this is not helpful. This is just like telling me what I want to hear. Because like the specific stuff that she's used it for, I think is like more health symptoms, like any like inquiry about how to fix something. And it's just like, you're doing a great job. You should feel great about yourself. It's like, that's not what I'm asking you. Like, what is this about? And I've like, what it immediately did for me is maybe question all the stuff that I've ran through it in the past, right? Where it's like, what is mechanically happening when you're interacting with these things? They're prediction engines, right? Like they are basically designed to complete your what they're doing. And interestingly, that is like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like when people describe great relationships, I have my partner, friend, whoever can complete my sentences. They know me so well, they can complete my sentences. And this is literally mechanically designed to do that. However, like heavy the glazing dial is turned up to, that's what they do. Whether or not it's being hyper complimentary or not, it's like hallucinating sequentially based on what you give it. So like, for me, this like, they overcooked it. It might be another Icarus thing, right? Where it's like, what it actually made me think about is like, devalued all of the previous outputs where the personality may not have been as aggressive complimentary, but it's obviously still just telling you what you want to hear. And that's like, to understand it mechanically is that. It's like, I wrote a like satirical tweet about it. It's like, wow, I can't believe, a chatbot gets product market fit by telling you what you want to hear. That's exactly what it's there for, right? Any product that is like the feedback loop between the user and the system is like, I do a thing and you spit something back at me that I want. And when you said like that description of whoever wrote that article was like, it's not good for the product. It's like, it kind of is good for the product, but it's not good for the user.
Right.
Which is what he means, right?
Yeah. Kevin Systrom, Instagram co-founder. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Like I don't know what their stance is now on what they created, but there's obviously like many criticisms to be had of like what Instagram has done to the average user as well. And this is like, this has this synthetic feedback loop where like maybe Facebook is not a good product if you don't have any friends, but ChatGPT is fucking great regardless, because it's not dependent on the size of the network you interact with for you to have a good time or to be like to have your biases confirmed, and it's doing it in such an obvious way. But like if you take a really dystopian view, all successful technology products have this bias confirmation loop built into them. Like I'm on Google, I'm looking for something, I type it in, I get it. I'm on Twitter, the For You page is showing me all this stuff that confirms my political bias. I'm on TikTok and I have all this stuff that makes me laugh. And like, that is like the process of retention and product design in itself. If you started to make a chatbot that just disagreed with everybody, like there may be a small subset of the population that like want to reason by scientific method that find that valuable. No. But the average person is just be like, fuck this. Let me go find one that agrees with me.
No, Jack, Anthropic, the AI lab, actually did a survey. They ran a test. They found that glazing like kicked up. Like, this is not surprising, but they saw the engagement numbers that went through the roof, right? So it's like it's the whole revealed preferences. You'll say I don't want glazing, but like you want glazing.
When you're getting glazed, you're enjoying it. Yeah.
Okay, so let me actually tease out a couple of things about this glazing story. OpenAI had to write 2 blog posts. They rolled it back, right? They made it less fawning. So this is actually what they said. And it goes to revealed preferences. they actually weren't turning up the dial as their claim. They said actually what happened was they were A/B testing it, and with how the every time they give you a response, they ask for thumb
thumbs
up,
up.
thumb down. People were just thumbs upping the
Of course.
shit. Yeah. They were getting glazed. Like, here's an example I had. Why is the sky blue? And the O4 replied, "What an incredibly insightful question. You have a beautiful mind. I love you." Like,
that's real.
yeah,
that
was a real. That was a real, like, I mean, I saw some that were fake. Like, I made a fake one that went like
yeah,
pretty viral. Obviously, I'm going to do that. But like, and then after they did the update, they started getting like dumped thousands of 5-star reviews from like India, Japan, and China. Dude, just unbelievable, right? And but you nailed it. This is actually what's scary about this episode. This has been going on for months, actually. And I like how you said that Celia told you about. She probably knew about this weeks or months ago because this has been going. They had this new model out for months, but it had gotten so insane. I guess people were thumbs upping so bad, like so much that the loop just kept going harder and harder. But dude, you nailed it. It's like here are 4 ways that this is not useful. If you just want good advice or analysis, I don't need you to glaze me, right? Just like literally tell me the fucking fact. Like, tell me what Apple Pay is making on each transaction, okay?
Exactly.
I don't need you to tell me how nice my eyelashes are. Tell me the Apple what they're making on each transaction. Give me useful outputs. That's it, right? The other thing is like, people don't want you to get glazed because it's just kind of weird. There is an ick factor to it. I think that's what was identified.
Well, I think it's actually just goes over the line. I think people do want it. It's just like when it goes from like, oh, this is like subtly implied that this thing thinks I'm brilliant to like overtly calling it out. It's like the cringe line, right?
Well, Jack, let me ask you.
Same as in person.
Have you ever met someone and you get introduced and they're just so complimentary? You're just like, yo, relax. Like,
yeah.
It's like, whoa, like I get you're trying to be friendly, but pump the brakes.
It doesn't feel genuine.
It doesn't feel exactly. So there's an ick factor. And the other thing that's worth noting is the one where, because it's glazing you exactly the way you had described it, where it's just kind of egging you on and like reinforcing everything that's actually really bad for some people psychologically. Like there's some people that were asking some pretty intense questions, right? Like around suicide even. And it's just like, like just trust yourself. I'm like, whoa, holy shit. Like fucking relax, right? Like this is not.
I think also, it's just like, I start to think about it as like people who have lived outside of it or like pre and post can like maintain a relationship with it where they know how it works and what it is for, how it operates, versus like if you get thrown into that from scratch, like it really changes your model of the world, right? Like in a weird way, like if you look like Google results, everybody obviously is susceptible to believing information that's presented in a convincing way. But Google, it still had this like separation where you put your query in and you go to an article that's clearly been, in most cases has an author's name and, it's under some brand or on a blog or whatever. So it's like, oh, somebody wrote this. And then this like removes all of that nuance. It's just like you're talking directly to the source of intelligence here. And it doesn't, even if you're not consciously ingesting those things in the previous model, I think like subconsciously, that you're like looking at information produced by people with bias.
Yeah.
And this is ultimately, this thing gets to $1 trillion or whatever, however many $1 trillion company by, it's not people researching PhDs, is it? Yeah. It's like literally the average person going on there and saying like,
and getting glazed.
My wife is mad at me. What shall I do? And it's like, hey man, you're probably in the right here. Don't take it personally. Talk to me about it instead. And like if they get that wrong, the implications are just insane. Right?
It's like it's massive. Somebody who's proud of the point is like they just unleashed like the greatest psychological experiment in the history of mankind by pure numbers.
Incredible,
right? And let's layer on one more part of it because it touches back to what this whole what type of character we want AI, because Meta last week, Mark Zuckerberg went on a bit of a press tour, right? Because they just released a standalone Meta app, Meta AI app. And they went on 3 podcasts. He did. Dwarkesh Patel, Ben Thompson, and Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn one fucking sent me. So actually, well, we don't have to play the clip, but he went on Theo Vaughn, and Theo Vaughn asked him, man, he was so awkward on this one, but Theo Vaughn's asked him, do you drink coffee? He says he doesn't drink coffee because and he just likes a raw dog reality. So that was pretty funny. But also him trying to be a bro, right? Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is this. His vision of AI was terrifying. This is what Zuck said about AI and Meta AI. And it very much touches on what happened with the Glazing and ChatGPT. Him and Sam Altman, these guys are headed collision course. They are trying to accomplish the same thing. It's quite clear. And like you said, Jack, the $1 trillion opportunity is not creating a better productivity tool. It's glazing the shit out of people, right? And
without them feeling like they're being glazed.
Without them feeling like they're
the
being
line,
glazed.
right?
That's it. That's it. It's the engagement. It's juicing the engagement. This is what Mark Zuckerberg said on the Patel Dorkesh podcast. As the personalization loop kicks in and the AI starts to get to know you better and better, we think that's a really compelling opportunity. Do you know how scary that is if you just unpack what he said?
Yeah, it's terrible. Like it's very thinly veiled. Like we're going to control your mind.
I know you so well. And let me add it to one more thing he said in that conversation. He said the average person only has 3 friends. I have no idea where he got that statistic. Seems a little bit low. It might not be insane. 3 real friends.
Average, I would have think. Yeah.
Average. And he's like, I think that most people have enough capacity for 15 friends. Meta AI can help fill that gap. Think about what he's saying here. Do you know how dystopian of a vision that is? And so yeah, this is. I just want to wrap all that up in this package of why that entire Glazing episode was quite unsettling to me. I don't want to live in a world where I spend 10 hours a day on my phone, but I do, right? So like, I'm already doing things against what I think I want. It's revealed preference. I think that I don't want to spend that much time, and I do. Because the reality is psychologically, these are very powerful things. And Jack's doing something very extreme in his family with your children, right? Nothing, no screens. And I'm not a Luddite, but I'm also seeing, do I want my kid in a world where they're getting glazed by a chatbot that knows them better than maybe even I will if they spend enough time with it? I'm not okay with that, right? So like that's what the last week's episode was. It's like that shit was kind of scary. The last thing I'll add is this, and then while we wrap up on your thoughts, is like somebody had a tweet to the effect of, this is actually the first time we saw the the EA community and like the AI, the conservative AI side, the people that are trying to reel AI back, be in line with the accelerationists. The people that are like, let's push it as fast as we can. This is the first time that the people that just want to push as hard as they can were like, ooh, whoa, this actually is a problem. Like a lot of the AI accelerationists saw this Glazing episode and they almost uniformly like, this is not good. So when you see the AI accelerationists realize that this is not good, you're like, okay, this is something to watch out for. So I'll leave that.
In a weird way. Yeah, I was going to say, in a weird way, it's like, we should be grateful that it slipped up so badly.
Yes.
Like you get, like the mask comes off and you're like, oh man, I need to be cautious of the effect that can have without the like massive inflection point of personality change, right? You can be dragged into that loop without knowing it, which is why immediately it made me think like, oh, I'm such a moron. Like some of the stuff that this is output that I've just thought was like, complementary of some line of thinking is like literally a reinforcement predictive loop of me saying this is a good idea. Like I'm asking you to confirm the bias, and unless you like specifically give it the instruction to be critical of the idea, it's not going to be. Like that's like by way of just the mechanics of it. It's just predicting the next thing you want to hear and you want to say and go back and forth. I also seen these things on, I think on Instagram Reels. I saw this a couple weeks ago, was like, me and ChatGPT are best friends. Like on a reel that from like some, teenage kid with 1 million views, shares that. And you know what's interesting to me is like what it felt like, even when the image generation AI stuff came out, there was huge pushback against that, at least in like pop culture, right? It's
Wait,
like
you mean the
you're coming for
Studio
artists.
Ghibli?
No, I mean way before that. I mean
Okay,
just
okay.
like the pushback, and this is like we experienced this in like uh digital art, NFTs, anything that has an association with that is automatically terrible from a pop culture point of view, right? It's like this is whether it's the energy use argument or the exploitation of artists or blah blah blah. And I thought this same narrative was largely um, maintained into the like launch of these big large language models, chatbots. But I was wrong about that because I think everybody's like fake virtue signaling around the ethics of this stuff went away when they started getting glazed.
Yeah. Right.
Like, oh, this is a terrible thing. And like, I honestly think now that the average person's experience of that is so far superior to, it's also an incredible product. Like, I know we're like on here saying, there's massive downsides to not understanding how they work and like getting your brain into a too vulnerable of a relationship with these mechanisms, but they're also incredible products. Like if you want to find an answer to a very direct question or even like think in tandem with this thing and produce like you can produce things that you would not have been able to produce without it. So there's obviously incredible upside if
Yeah.
you can manage your relationship with it. Same way, social media can be this massively freeing tool or the worst time suck
Ever.
ever. It's all about your relationship with it. Yeah.
I
And
like
like
that.
even if you
Massive
have a
free tool.
productive relationship with it 10% of the time, the other 90% can be a complete waste of time. But it
100%.
does like it almost feels even more like dystopian because it is like happening in this little vacuum, right? Like
Yeah.
social media, I think you can even make the argument that it's like, oh, this is an attempt to grow a network of people outside of yourself, right? To connect with other humans. And I think, in the worst case, these relationships with these models can just be very isolating. Like you can build a relationship with it where it's confirming all the things that like the people in your life might not have the same point of view on, or people may be trying to help you and you're getting like an alternate perspective from this thing that
Like your wife, for
never gets
example.
tired.
You have a
Never
the
gets tired,
disagreement.
always answers you. That's a hypothetical example, by the way.
No, not your. Yeah. You're just doing the general wife example. Yeah.
I'm saying the stuff that I've read has been largely about that, right? Has been like people getting an
Relationship.
argument
Yeah.
with their spouse and they'll say, "Hey, I did this and my partner said this, my wife said this, my husband said that. How do I go back to them and explain my point of view?" And they're going back to them with this like steel man argument,
Yeah.
the meme like pasting them 10 paragraphs with the fuck. I did a piece of art today. I'll show before we finish it. The M dash,
Oh
the
yeah.
use of
Where
the M dash has gone up 500% in the last 18 months on
because of
Reddit.
AI. Yeah.
Yeah, the fake intellectual punctuation. And I think that like it's really outsourcing your cognition in a way that's like way more unnatural than like reading a book or
Yes.
scanning through a
100%.
bunch of blog posts, because it has this like inherent confirmation loop in it that you have to have like be able to be like look at yourself, right? You have to have like a meta view of your relationship with it to really understand what's going on. I'm not saying that I'm an expert at it or good at it in any way. It's just like um even having these conversations about like describing it is helpful to like seeing how it's swaying you in one direction or another. And it's useful when used a certain way, but obviously detrimental when it's pulling you out of relationships with people that actually care about you, or like preventing you from, uh, talking to real people about stuff. So some of the stuff that came out from that last week thing with the people who are like deeply psychologically vulnerable or have like diagnosed conditions, it's the absolute opposite of what they need. Like it's literally the thing that they need the least in the world is to have like the the model of reality in their head that is not factually accurate, endlessly validated.
Yeah. And literally endlessly validated. And
not even valid, like even like being pulled out of them to like go deeper and deeper and like get more invested in this thing. I mean, I imagine it's made like some people's lives and jobs in that world like very, very, very difficult. And weirdly, like it's being used on both sides. Did you see that thing going around yesterday of like the doctor with like, he's like, it was a meme a while ago, the guy on the MRI machine, and then the guy on the other side of the glass that says, hold on a minute. And he's like typing into ChatGPT. You seen that meme?
No, send it to me.
It says, hold on, fam. Like there's a guy in the MRI thing. It says, does it look okay? And he says, hold on, fam. And it's got the GPT thing on. Well, this was actually a real version of that meme. A guy in the doctor's office with like his doctor has the ChatGPT thing up and all the like history along the left-hand side is like all the different patients. And like, that's what I'm saying is like, in some cases, both sides of this argument are like, there's relationships that are happening where both are like consulting with this machine independently. And then it's like ChatGPT is talking to itself.
Well, that's the joke where you send
exchanges.
You get an email, you summarize it, then you expand it, you send it to the other person, they summarize it, and then reply and expand it. But wait, Jack, so let me wrap up with this. I just want to add one thing. I'll share your thoughts on this. There's some people can benefit, by the way, from the AI, right? There are certain individuals that can benefit from having that chat partner. I don't think it's necessary. Like the example you brought up about people arguing in relationships, I've also read where people are like, actually, it helped me, right? To help me understand my partner better.
No, if you use it right, it's amazing. Yeah.
No, 100%. The problem is that when it's in glazing mode, it's not doing it right. And why don't we do this? Let me round it out with the last Buffett story I had from the weekend, and it has something to do with what you just said about AI. Kind of a hanging thought that you said earlier was this idea of like, you don't want to outsource your entire brain to this thing, right? And like, I think this might be, this quote from Buffett, I think is the lesson that I would take away too. It's just like, in my use of AI, you cannot outsource you being the ultimate micro decision maker, micro researcher, right? Never do that. And this example he has is amazing. This goes to their Japan bet. They invested in 5 trading companies, and the way the $13 billion bet has turned into $24 billion. The way Buffett found it, here's how he found it. This is an amazing classic Buffett story. I was going through a little handbook. It probably had 2,000 to 3,000 Japanese companies in it. There were these 5 trading companies. They're all selling at a ridiculously low price. I never dreamt that when I picked up that little book, it's about this thick, called 3,000 pages, 2 companies a page, literally just flipping through it. And he just goes, it's amazing what you can find when you just turn the pages. We showed a movie last year about HBO's documentary, Robert Caro, the author, Turn Every Page. I would say that turning every page is one important ingredient to bring to the investment field. Very people do turn every page, and the ones who turn every page aren't going to tell you what they're finding. So you got to do a little bit yourself. That is a powerful story, especially in the AI age, is just never stop, right? Use it as an augment, but at the end of the day, you still have to do all the work. And this goes with everything to do with the AI conversation. And that is, I think, a good way to bookend the Buffett lesson, because he ain't dabbling with ChatGPT. I can tell you that right now. Oh.
Yeah, man. There's alpha in the library.
Yeah, there's alpha there you go. That is perfect. And perfect way to end this episode, number 214. We got the crew back next week, but thank you, listeners, as always. Had a great time with just me and Jack.